Now off to our presentation. Today's training is the second of a series of trainings supporting immigrant families and refugees children. This has been in partnership and in collaboration with UCSF, Benioff Oakland Children's Hospital, Center of Excellence, Child Health and Wellbeing, with coordination efforts made through with and partnership with Aura Aparicio and Griselda Chavez, who's made these efforts and connected us with trainers and presenters for today. Griselda Chavez, who's an infant development specialist at early intervention services over there at UCSF, Benioff Oakland Children's Hospital, will be introducing our presenters today. Our presenters for today is Dr. Vilma Reyes and Roberto Macias. Now turning it over to you, Griselda.
Thank you, Catherine. Good morning, everyone. My name is Griselda Chavez. I am with the Center of Excellence for Immigrant Child Health and Wellbeing at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospitals. We are a cross-Bay center focused on the health and well-being of immigrant and refugee children. Among our various initiatives, we coordinate and lead a pediatric asylum clinic, providing medical and psychological forensic exams to support children and youth petitioning for asylum. In addition, we are also training the next generation of providers. These are medical students and medical residents with an immigration-focused lens. Thank you for your interest in this session. These are very challenging and uncertain times for immigrant communities, as well as for providers serving these communities. We are very grateful to be partnering once again with First Five Alameda County to offer this training. And I would like to welcome our two presenters today, Dr. Vilma Reyes and Roberto Macias, licensed clinical social worker. So that we have some more time for their presentations, I will put their extended bios in the chat. Thank you very much. And I will hand it off to Dr. Reyes.
Thank you, Griselda. Thank you to First Five and the Center and all of you who made this possible. And thanks to all of you for being here today and for doing this work, our fellow warriors in this fight for immigrant justice, especially in these trying times. I highly respect your work and what it takes to sustain this work day to day. And I hope what we bring to you today brings you some connection, some comfort, some skills, and refuels your passion for this work. Wounding, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, I guess. I'm at a clinical child trauma research program at UCSF. We provide a kind of treatment for young children called Child-Parent Psychotherapy for young kids exposed to trauma. I've been fortunate to learn the model from those that developed it, and I fell in love with it, and I've been there for now almost 20 years. I am a asylum. I came here seeking asylum when I was 12. I'm from Peru. I'm an immigrant myself, and have devoted my career, my life to giving back to the immigrant community and to supporting folks that support immigrants. So I'm very honored to be here today. I bring to you everything I've learned that I've been able to get my hands on what's been written on trauma, how people hurt and how people heal. I bring to you, maybe most importantly, the wisdom I have been honored to gain from hearing carefully to so many stories, from accompanying pain, from listening to families, warrior families that have done the impossible to get here with their young kids. And I've learned a lot from them on what happens when we hurt in these not just interpersonal experiences, but collective experiences of trauma and injustice, and what it takes to heal. And I hope that today we can think together about what are these buffers to trauma? What can you do to sustain this work? And what can you do to support young children and immigrant families, especially right now? The story of wounding and healing, of course, is a timeless one, right? We have, as long as we've been people, there's stories interwoven of both wounding and healing. And making this impossible decision of risking your life staying or risking your life fleeing, the immigrant experience, this forced choice, is also timeless. You could say immigrants are a self-selected group of people that by definition have two things. They have optimism. They have hope. They thought that something could be better on the other side, and that was worthwhile risking your life for and seeking out. And two, they have courage. And these are powerful forces that we need to lift up, claim, tap into. If you're part of the journey of an immigrant, whether you're a teacher, counselor, attorney, mental health provider, whatever roles are represented here today, know that if you're working with an immigrant, you are working with someone with an indomitable spirit, someone who likely survived horrific circumstances, overcame unimaginable obstacles, and is here working to the bone for those they love, facing horrific targeted hatred and injustice. So if you work for an institution that maybe leaves a question or two on strengths, coupled with all the paperwork we do that categorizes problems, I say that you tell them to give you more paper. I think we need more paper to write all the strengths that people bring. And I want us to spend some time. I mean, I don't know about you, but I spent so much money and time training myself on categorizing problems. As a psychologist, they teach you this very well. And I want us to spend just as much time learning about strengths. How can people overcome so much and still be standing? And this is a question I ask so many of the parents that come to us for treatment. I'm literally asking them, and I'm really curious, how are you still standing? I think it's a worthwhile question. Because as the insults to our sense of justice, integrity, wholeness increase, we have to increase our buffer for it. We have to be intentional about increasing our buffer. So learning about the strengths that help us buffer is certainly, worthwhile. And I think will be the way we get through this time. I have a few slides to kind of guide our conversation today. I do invite your reflections and questions. We will have time for questions at the end as well. You will have all of these slides available to you as well. This is a beautiful painting from Edith Boncales Strauss to depict the immigration journey. And I'll let you interpret all the levels of how profound it is with its roots, and the metaphor of the butterfly has been used often in immigration. I invite us to reflect on how we can lean on each other and on these buffers to weather this storm. You need your heart for this work. It is I hope we have to work so hard to preserve our sense of being connected, to still be able to feel, to fight against the urge to either numb out or be overwhelmed, and to continue growing our capacity to just feel. We need to protect our hearts. We need to care for our hearts and for each other's hearts. We need our hearts for this work. And even when sometimes you need to take breaks and come back to it. And so as I speak today, if you need to take breaks, if you need to move, get up, stand up, drink water, metabolize. Let it flow. Resist the urge to numb out and just let it be and let it flow. And I hope I'm mindful of avoiding examples that are very triggering. I know we're all in a very tender place right now. And I'm going to spend most of the time thinking about buffers and skills, and very little on setting the context for trauma. But even then, this talks can be triggering, so please take care of yourself if you feel activated. I want to start with this quote that has given me a lot of comfort these past 100 days. They want you to feel powerless and surrender and let them trample everything that you're not, and you're not going to let them. You're not giving up, and neither am I. The fact that we cannot save everything does not mean we cannot save anything. And everything we can save is worth saving. You may need to grieve or scream or take time off, but you have a role no matter what. And right now, good friends and good principles are worth gathering in. Remember what you love. Remember what loves you. Remember in this tide of hate what love is. From Rebecca Solnit.
Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non-white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed.
Beautiful words from Lucille Clifton. Just to lay the foundation for what we've learned about trauma. Trauma is, we can think of it on a continuum. None of us are spared from some level of stress, toxic stress, moving all the way to trauma, where our very sense of survival and integrity is being targeted. Think of it as a continuum, and think of it also, on the other side, as a dynamic relationship between whatever insult it is, and this insult is in a range from, unavoidable stressors we all experience all the way to stressors that come at a cost to our health and our mental health. So there's a range on its level of insult. And think of also of a dynamic relationship on whatever insult this is, and what you have within you to buffer from it. For a long time, and even in the mental health field, early childhood was a mystery. For a long time, people thought that the younger you are, the less impacted you are by trauma because you won't remember, you don't notice. I wish that were true. We have a robust body of literature that says otherwise, decades of data that say that the younger you are, the more impacted you are, the more vulnerable you are. Why? Because you have no buffer. You're completely dependent on your caregivers to be that buffer for you. And so when you think about this dynamic relationship between these two things, many times we have no control over the insults that have already happened, that are currently happening, but we have a lot of control on the buffer, on building that buffer, however way we can. And especially the most vulnerable community of young children from birth to 5 and families need our support to build up that buffer. The word resilience has been weaponized so much, I hesitate to use it, but I also don't have an alternate word necessarily. We're going to use buffer for now, but I want you to think about what is already there that people are bringing to the table. What do we grow from? And what do we tap into? Because many times families come in feeling quite defeated, especially in this context. And I think it's incumbent on us to help them see what we see in them and what they've had to overcome to get here, and all that they have learned along the way to be able to survive until they get to today. When we think about trauma, for a long time it was defined as distinct events. A lot of the trauma assessments are sadly, for the most part, only including specific events that you can pinpoint. What we've learned and what we've had more and more attention to, especially in the last decade, is that this lives within a broader context of collective traumas that have just as much of an impact, often are unspoken, unasked about, to those that experience privilege, might be invisible to systems might be the unspeakables, that have just as much of an impact and a very profound cumulative impact over time. And I want to bring more awareness to those since we're clearly there today. Dr. Kenneth Hardy talks about these as an assaulted sense of self, dying by a million paper cuts, of the messages that you get about you and your people and your parents, how safe you are, how welcomed you are, how safe you are in the world. Resmaa Menakem talks about them as a soul wounds. It's the wear and tear of our body, our mind, our soul that creates essentially an imprint that our safety is tentative and that people that look like you and people that look like your parents are at risk. They're at risk at being pulled over. They're at risk at even leaving the house, going to a grocery store. For young children, this comes at a tremendous cost because in early childhood, we need to believe this myth that our parents are superheroes. They are bigger, wiser, stronger, and they can keep us alive in this otherwise frightening, big, scary world. We need to believe that to feel safe, to be able to explore. That myth is often popped in adolescence. I'm certainly experiencing that right now with my 12-year-old, where all of a sudden you think, you know what? You actually don't know anything, parents. And it is sadly popped too prematurely for young kids who see their parents shaking with fear watching the news, worry that they won't be able to pick them up from school because they could get deported or picked up at work, who see their parents so frightened, who see them shot by police, disrespected, targeted. And so I want us all as a community of healers, fighters, providers who are here to wrap around young kids and families, to think about how do we build up the parents' safety and confidence in their ability to protect their child, in their protective shield, and how do we protect young kids to continue having this myth that their parent can get the support they need, can have justice, can have integrity. Trauma comes at a tremendous cost to our health. This has been widely now proven and spoken about by so many studies that I'm going to be very brief. It comes at when the moment that we experience fear, our body automatically goes into fight, flight, or freeze. There's shifts that happen in the hormones in our body, in our brain, in our health over time. It's a brilliant system because it has kept us alive, but it comes at the expense of everything else. It's detected automatically by our nervous system. It activates this cascade of neurotransmitters and hormones, prepares us to survive. It is amazing for short-term survival, but it compromises so many of our cellular aging, immunity. So many studies have proven the impact of that over time. What I have seen in 20 years of talking to families is that it impacts their ability to have these three things: sense of control, connection, and meaning. We weren't meant to be in survival mode chronically. It has to come at a cost. We're always going to put survival first, but it will come at a cost. And this is where I see the cost. We all deserve, as people, a sense of control, connection, and meaning. Trauma, by definition, robs you of a sense of control because it's an unpredictable event, insult that you have no control over. It robs you of a sense of connection because it calls into question the very fabric of trusting those around you and society being set up for you to feel, protected and safe. It calls into question whether you can trust someone else. And it calls into question a sense of meaning because things that make no sense, that are unjust and shouldn't happen, do happen. These three words have been a guiding light for me over time because they inform what people need to heal. So in any intervention, in any services that are provided by all the roles represented here today, think about that. How does whatever I do give people back a sense of control, voice, and choice? Give people back an ability to be able to trust in others, a sense of connection. How does it help young kids, especially, and parents and families create a sense of meaning of their life? These three things. Organizations, like people, are impacted by trauma, right? An organism of whatever organism, we belong to probably many organizations. You could think as a country, we're an organization, a group. We can also be impacted by trauma. If you are an organization that is exposed to trauma and you do nothing to buffer from it, you will be trauma reactive, because that's what trauma does. So essentially, you're just responding to what trauma does. Trauma fragments. Trauma overwhelms, it's driven by fear, it's reactive, it's rigid, or it's numb. And systems can become this way too. That's a trauma-inducing system. We, for the past decade at least or more, have been moving towards trauma-informed trainings, trauma-informed systems at schools and the medical profession across many disciplines, to be at least informed of what does trauma do to people, to brains, to learning, to systems, to relationships. How do we resist re-traumatizing folks? Can we be a system that holds these things in mind? Understanding trauma and stress, cultural humility and responsiveness, safety, predictability, compassion and dependability, empowerment and collaboration, resilience or social emotional learning. So all these components. I think we can move all the way, we can go even a step beyond being informed in trauma and create organizations that are trauma reducing, organizations that have such a buffer to trauma that by being part of it and those that interact in it have opportunities to heal, because it is the opposite of trauma. If trauma fragments, it needs to be an integrated program. If trauma is reactive, we need to be reflective, slowing things down, centered on relationships, being collaborative. That gives people a voice and choice. Being prevented on growth and the future, not just reacting to the crisis at hand. Being flexible and adaptable, equitable and inclusive. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking, where am I, or where is my organization? You're probably in all of them. This is fluid. It's a range, just like people are. So I might, on a good day, be in the middle, and then I might become very activated and become reactive. And just like I can do that, systems can do that. COVID hit, people maybe became reactive, or an election result, that people might have become reactive. There's an urge for that, to respond to a stress in a fight, flight, or freeze response. It takes practice and commitment and accountability to notice you're there and say, oh, let's ground ourselves, let's re-anchor on who we want to be as an organization, and strive for regulation and all these other things. This, of course, gets passed down generation to generation from all the bigger insults of society, colonization, slavery, and what has one generation taught the other on what you need to do to survive, which some of that are trauma reactions, and some of it is also, we don't just get passed on trauma reactions from our ancestors. We also get a legacy passed on, a legacy of survival. And much of that is also indigenous healing practices and wisdom and dichos and all the things that we've learned from our parents and grandparents, who are now, all the researchers are like, we have discovered gratitude helps your health. We have discovered compassion and helps our health. And you're like, yep, my grandma knew this all along. I love this artwork. End quote. The artist is Jade Levy, and the quote is, "What is stronger than the human heart, which shatters over and over and still lives?" And I think emotions are information. If we can grow our courage to feel them, if we can grow our courage to let our heart break a little and then know it can be mended, I think there isn't anything sadder than an unbroken heart. And so I know I often feel the urge to not feel, because it's too much, it's too overwhelming. And I think we need to pace ourselves, and we need to metabolize, pace, metabolize. But we can't do that because that comes at a too high of a cost, not just on our work, but on our life and those that we love. So keep your heart mended. Expect that if you're doing this work, it will break a little. And that is part of it because we've chosen careers and where we're accompanying pain and injustice. And that takes a lot of courage and commitment and takes a lot of building up our own internal buffer to sustain it. There will be a resource shared with you on the chat. It's a resource I found that has some recommendations. It comes in 3 languages for parents, especially with young kids, on what you can do to help them manage fear and anxiety. So I'm transitioning a little bit more to what we can do now. The name of this is Managing Fear. Fear is organized by the attachment system, right? Especially in early childhood. So to support a child, we have to support their caregiving system, their parents, their families. Helping parents is supported by research, is the best mediating factor to helping to child outcomes. So there's many things we can't control, but we do know parents need to be lifted up. Parents need to be supported. In fact, over the past, aside from immigration, these are global statistics. Over the past 50 years, consistently, researchers have found, social psychologists, researchers have found that we are experiencing less and less connection and increased isolation and loneliness. And especially in the US, the stats are the highest dip, consistently dip over 50 years. This researcher calls it social capital. How much we lean on each other, sense of community and connectedness is decreasing consistently over 50 years. And I think it's no surprise, other studies on parenting have found that over the past 50 years, parents feel less and less supported and more parental stress. In fact, the Surgeon General, so these are the folks that say, by the way, smoking is bad for you. And they've said, oh, smoking is a health hazard. They just said last year that the current highest health hazard is parenting. Parenting, something we've done for 300,000 years. What's different about it now? What's different about it is that it was never meant to be done by one person or two. It was always done in a village, always done in community, since we've been people. But as we become more and more embedded in an individualistic culture, more isolated, just even the way communities are built. You don't have the plazas anymore where everybody comes together necessarily in a town or in communities. Families are raised by 1 or 2 parents who are both trying to stay afloat financially in trying times and parent. And they are the connection between parenting stress and health outcomes are so high that in many parts of the world, that new generation is looking at parents and saying, I don't know that I want to become a parent, including my own kid. We need to support parents. And so I have some specific recommendations. The first one, this is a term coined by my mentor who developed the model of treatment that I do, Child-Parent Psychotherapy. Her name is Alicia Lieberman. She says, speak the unspeakable. Especially with young children, people feel really pulled to not talk to them about hard things that they're seeing anyway. The pull to think they're too little, they don't understand, they don't see, they're sleeping, they didn't notice, they're not asking questions, so let's not bring it up, let's not make them sad. The pull is so strong, and sadly, it is to their disservice because young children need their grown-ups' help to make meaning, to understand their world. And if we don't give them a way to speak to it and understand it, they're going to come up with their own conclusions. And 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 times, the way that they will understand it is that it was their fault. I know this is hard to believe, but trust me, I've done this work for a long time. And almost always, when we support parents in talking to their kids about what's happened, we learned that they had been carrying that. Young kids think they are the center of the world, and they're kind of coupled with like magical thinking and how much we spend time in socialization. Many times think daddy went away or mommy is sad because I'm bad or because I did something. It's kind of a way that we try to create understanding in a way that gives us a little control, right? I was bad, that's why that happened. Kids are hearing this in preschool, they're hearing this in the news. We need to help them understand it. We need to consider the child's developmental level so we don't overwhelm young children with more than they need to know, but we give them language for what they already see and hear and feel. And we create space to validate their feelings. Their fears are valid, their feelings are valid. I'll give you an example from my very first CPP case 20 years ago. This little girl was referred to me because she was experiencing tremendous separation anxiety in the morning at preschool. She was at risk of being expelled, really, because they were saying it takes 45 minutes to help soothe her at drop-off. We don't have enough teaching staff for that. I don't think we're equipped to support her emotional needs. So mom would come in and drop off very quickly and run out. Teachers would experience that as she didn't care. I met with the parent. She was fleeing because she was so afraid they were going to tell her she couldn't leave the kid dysregulated, and that she needed to work. She needed daycare, and she was so afraid they were going to give her feedback that her kid is not, calming down in the morning. And so she would understandably leave quickly. She also didn't want to be late for work. It took some time to gain her trust, but eventually I asked her, what is this fear? How do you understand her fear? She's afraid that when you leave. How do we understand that? What happened? And I remember this is a almost 3-year-old, so she was still 2, but very verbal, bright little girl. And the mom said, nothing's happened. She doesn't, she's just a baby. I don't know. She said, well, her father was deported, 2 weeks ago, but she doesn't know about that, and she's too little to understand. She didn't see it, it happened at work, so it doesn't impact her. And I said, well, she must have some understanding of where he went. It's been 2 weeks, she hasn't seen him. And mom said, well, now that you are asking it, yeah, at night, she taps on the window and she says, "Y papi?" And I just tell her, oh, honey, he's at work, he'll be back. He's at work, he'll be back. Because she couldn't explain that. She didn't know how to explain that to a 2-year-old. Over time, that was the story. Daddy went to work and never came back. And then I asked her, well, what do you tell her in the morning when you drop off? And she said, I tell her I have to go to work. Now that I don't have his income, if I don't go to work, we're going to get evicted. And I am just so petrified about that. And I said, do you think it's possible that when she hears you're going to work, and that's the place where daddy went poof, that scares her so much that you could disappear as well? And then who would take care of her? And she said, lady, I don't think she's thinking all that. Did you get the fact that she's 2? These were all meetings, just me and mom at this point. And I said, kids have to make meaning of their life. They have rich emotional lives. And I think she misses her daddy and worries that you could also go away. If one could go away, why could another? So she agreed to explain to her the truth. And she said, where would I even start explaining deportation to a 2-year-old? There are ways you can do that. We can keep things simple to their developmental level, but honest. And so we agreed on something, mom and I, that I have a globe in my office, and I would say, somebody made up this line and divided these countries, and they made up rules. Just like school has rules and home has rules, they have a rule that you have to have a special paper to be able to be on this side. And your family is from Mexico, and they told your daddy, you don't have that special paper, so you're going to have to go back to Mexico and get it. And he didn't want to leave. And he misses you. And he's working really hard to come back to you. And mom said, I'm willing to try anything. Let's try that. So we invite the little girl. And I said to her what we had agreed on. And the little girl looks to her mom and says, I'll never forget this, No mi culpa. It's not my fault. And the mom just like softened. No, mija, claro que no. Embraces her and says, you know, there's no way that you could have done that. Of course not. And now that she was able to be honest with her, she could talk to daddy on FaceTime and things were better. And the next morning, she told her, you know, when I go to work, that's different than what happened with daddy. I go to work, and when the hand goes to this time, I'm going to come back for you. The symptoms went away the next day. She was able to separate. They were able to regulate. Everything was, you know, at least this part of their life was better. A couple weeks later, she comes to me and says, oh, Vilma, can I talk to you? And she says, I just want to thank you. You helped me be honest with my little girl. And now, you know, things are better. And I want to tell you something. I don't think I'm being all the way honest with her. Because the truth is, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick her up from school because there were raids at his work. What if there's a raid in my employment and they pick me up? I'm also undocumented. And I never forget this case, and I use it for teaching because it helps us distinguish between helping young children understand what they already see, hear, feel, versus burdening them with the existential worries of adults. And I told mom, that's a worry you tell me about. That's a worry I hold with you. She cannot hold that possibility. You know, she needs to know that you intend to pick her up and that that's your plan. And if God forbid something happened, then we'll have a plan and that's another conversation. And I think we are all now holding this fear with people. Another recommendation is to create and share a plan. Sadly, this is the reality, and I can't imagine having to do this as a parent. I think it is the definition of torture to think that you could be separated from your young child. But I think we need to help parents, and I know you're doing other talks, so I'm going to keep this part brief, on letting kids know what the plan would be, having a person set up, getting that notarized, doing all the process legally for that person to be chosen, and talking to your children, helping parents talk to their children about it in simple ways, you know, that again doesn't give them more than what they need to know, that validates their feelings, centers around the child, not the parents' worry, the child, but is honest because the kids are hearing all of these things. And then the last recommendation on this is to maintain connection and pride in who they are. They are hearing and are bombarded every day by anti-immigrant hatred and xenophobia, even in the Bay Area. That sometimes is speaking the unspeakable, but giving them a space where they can talk about that with their parents, and parents continuing to hold and connect a thread to who they are and their culture has been shown to be a buffer, a protective factor. I'm going to transition to talk about the medicines, the buffers of trauma. I want to say that this isn't just for the families we support. This is for us. We, and this finally is in the latest book of the DSM, we can experience a mimic of post-traumatic stress disorder called secondary traumatic stress. It is the same exact symptoms as post-traumatic stress. We as providers can experience the exact same symptoms by hearing about an event. That's the only difference in diagnostic criteria. Instead of experiencing it, you're hearing about it. Look at this list. For many times people are experiencing these things, but they don't realize that it's secondary traumatic stress. But if you're experiencing any of these things, that is expected. That is part of doing trauma work. And there are things you can do to buffer from it. Vicarious trauma is more of a cumulative impact of complex trauma, and that also can have a tremendous impact on us as providers, help making us feel disconnected to those that we love, or sometimes reacting differently to threat and danger, feeling helpless or angry. Maybe our own faith is challenged. We might feel like we want to rescue all the people that we work with, or again, feel completely numbed out. Any of these things are almost expected as part of the work that we do. I just want to name it so that you can identify it and say, notice when it's happening for you. What does it look like for you? I've been supervising for a while. When I start a supervising relationship, I ask them on the very first day, how would I know when you are off? Experiencing secondary traumatic stress, overwhelmed, numb. Like, what does it look like for you? How do you know when you are off your best self? What does that look like? Because it's different for each person. Some might become overproductive and send me emails at 3 a.m. Some might be completely shut down. What does it look like for you? How do you tell when you're starting to feel it so that you can up your buffer? As the insult grows, we have to be more intentional to increase our buffer from it. These are the known buffers of trauma. This is based on everything I've ever learned on neuroscience, psychology, spirituality, indigenous wisdom, and the stories of people that have come to me. The harm is isolation and fragmentation. The medicine is connection. The harm is a heightened stress response, fight, flight, or freeze. The medicine is regulation. The harm is reactivity. The medicine is reflection. And I'm going to go through each of these, starting with connection, returning to community. Connection in all the ways. Connection to spirit, which has been associated with well-being, sense of purpose, meaning, deeper connection to community. When I say spirit, I don't necessarily mean organized religion, although that might be for you, but it's a connection to bigger things, to Mother Earth, to our ancestors, and it can be organized religion. It's been associated with reduced cellular aging, immunity, inflammation. These are the ways that we measure health and bioscience. All of these factors are related to aging and health. And I told you that I ask parents, how are you still standing? And I told you, but I didn't tell you the answer I get. The answer I almost always get is God. And maybe the next one is the love for my children and their family. That is how they're still standing. The next is connection to ourselves. Intentional self-love and self-regard, especially for marginalized communities who are bombarded every day with assaults to your sense of worth, is revolutionary. That is where the revolution starts in us. Connection to each other. We can't do this alone. We can't. We shouldn't have to. Nobody ever has. There is a personal accountability, but I do think we need to lean into more collective accountability. What do you need to be well? Tell somebody. The moment we say it, we put that intention, we manifest it, it's more likely to happen, it's more likely that you'll have the support in it. I call this gotcha, this feeling of somebody's got you, this safety net, where you catch others when you can. Let them catch you when you need it. We all need the safety net. And this feeling of you're not alone. I gotcha. It can be small things at work. It can be the everyday things of, hey, I knew that today would be hard for you. How did it go? And again, all of these things you can do for each other and you can do for families. I knew you have a upcoming court case. What kind of supports do you need for that? You're showing that you have someone in mind. I gotcha. I got you in my mind. I got you in my heart. And I got you in concrete ways. Sending soup when someone's sick, that is underrated, how far that goes. And part of that is building community. What infrastructures do we put in place across all levels? How do we support parents? We need a web for parents desperately. This art of being with, this sense of I can hold whatever is, I can be with you in it. Not to make it about me, not to give you advice, not to whatever, just be with, to be attuned to what you need and be present for it. What does it take to be with that way? It is probably the best gift you can give anybody. We're pulled in so many directions, so many distractions, multitasking all the time. Just being with somebody is so healing. That's all we all need. There is no clear or easy solutions to many of the questions we're grappling with, but you're not alone in it. I can be in it with you. I can hold space for you. I can listen generously. Not just so that I know, not thinking what I'm going to say next, but just listen generously. Doing that for others as much as you can shapes culture, shapes organizational culture, the kind of culture that we all need at our organizations. It shapes healing places. You can be part of what shapes that. Little things like remembering people's birthdays, bringing little treats from wherever you went on vacation, showing that you were thinking of them, whatever. Those little things shape how people relate to each other. The second one is regulation. The capacity to feel, to be with, to learn from our emotions. They're not something to change. They're just something to teach us. They just are. They pass. Mindfulness has a very strong body of research behind it. It builds more connections between areas of the brain, slows down reactivity, increases our regulation, strengthens empathy. A lot of research behind it. Just being mindful in the moment, just being with what is, what you're feeling. You're all carrying a lot and doing it marvelously, but it comes at a cost. And none of us can do this forever without being intentional about how you're filling that cup yourself. And we do this in relationship. This dance of relating. Regulation happens in the context of relationship. Everything happens in the context of relationship. We learn to regulate our affect through relationships. That is how infants learn to co-regulate. People use the term co-regulate when they talk about early childhood, as if all of a sudden you don't need to co-regulate. I co-regulate every day. I don't know about you. We're co-regulators for life. This expectation that now all of a sudden you can self-regulate all the time is not true. We're setting ourselves up. We need to create a working alliance where we're building the kinds of relationships that will withstand doing this work for the years ahead, sadly to say. This kind of web and this kind of support helps people do their best work when everybody feels seen, heard, understood, supported, challenged. You can't choose what to feel, but we can choose whether to feel. So again, that's something else I ask all people I supervise on the first day. What is your plan to do with the pain that arises from this work? What will you do with it? Because it will happen. I hope it happens. What will you do with it? Have a plan. This is theory from Dan Siegel on the window of tolerance. We all have a window of what we can tolerate in terms of affect, where we are kind of most comfortable and can deal with whatever is happening in our life. We can go into hyper arousal, which is more of the fight response, feeling out of control, anxious, angry. We want to, fight, or can be flight too, running away. We sometimes go into hypoarousal when we're just zoned out, spacey, numb, frozen. Flight response. We all do this all day long. We work, we spend a lot of energy trying to stay in this window of tolerance. And then sometimes we go one opposite end or the other. People tend to get stuck on one or the other. If you get stuck on the red, that can look like more like clinical anxiety. If you get stuck on the blue, it can look like depression, addiction, efforts to numb out. Our goal as providers, and the goal that we have in working with families, if you're a direct service provider, is to grow this window. We have to work at it every day through regulation, through mindfulness, How do we grow this capacity so that there's more that we can withstand and still stay in a place that is regulated and it's not either overwhelmed or numbing out? It's important to know where you are and where you go so that you know what you need. If you tend to be up here, you need to down-regulate. And these are some examples for that. You can do this with young children. You can do this with parents. You can do this for yourself. If you tend to go on a hypoarousal, then you need to do more upregulation to get yourself more alert and engaged. And that might be the list that you see on the right. There's fun ways to do this with kids. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, they work with adults too. So I still do even the kid things, strategies. Like pushing a wall really helps me, and that's something I do with kids. So as the insults grow, your repertoire has to grow. There's no other way. Otherwise, it will flow out and you'll have the impact of that. So we need to grow this window. What are ways you already do that? And what are ways you need to up your game? How do we maintain calm in the midst of crisis? How can we stay regulated? We know that regulation is connected to better decisions, higher level thinking. All our frontal lobe that gets impacted by the stress response is tuned in when we are regulated, is connected. You can do little things to shift organizational culture, like even stretching between meetings. Starting Zoom meetings 5 minutes after so people can get water if you're back-to-back on Zoom. If you have regular meetings where you come together to solve problems, maybe start out by what's going well. Have people share one thing that's going well. What brings you hope? Build these in as part of the culture. And it's just one step at a time. When it feels so big, do the next thing that's right for you. It's about the little things often that become the big things. It takes 7 times to build a routine. What are new routines that you need? New habits that you need to up your care? There are some protective factors within organizations that can grow the buffer as a team. You'll have access to all these slides. I'm going a little bit faster now as I want to make sure I get to the last little bit. But if any of this is interesting you want to review them, you will be able to do so. I would say the biggest thing you can do to prevent secondary traumatic stress is metabolize, a term I learned from Resma Menachem. If you have not read his book, My Grandmother's Hands, I highly, highly encourage you to read it. But this idea of what will you need to do to carry this heaviness? How will you metabolize it? Walking is great, movement, water, talking to somebody. It has to flow out, otherwise it gets stuck in us. Lastly, reflection. We counteract reactivity with reflection, growing our reflective capacity. It's associated with positive outcomes across all levels, including less turnover, less burnout. For parents, reflective capacity is the main protective factor that's associated with better child outcomes. If we can increase a parent's ability to be connected to their child, to be reflective of their relationship with their child, to reflect on their relationship and what they want to do maybe differently, just the capacity to imagine the child's perspective, emotions, that is connected to the highest mediating factor for better outcomes for kids. So how do we do this? We first start inward. We always start with ourselves because things come up for us. We have our own baggage, our own experiences, our own pains that we bring into the work. What is coming up for you? Start with that first. Regulate. Take a breath. Brain science says it takes 90 seconds of a particular type of breath where the out breath is double as long as the in breath to activate a calm response. That is the antidote of the stress response. Everybody has 90 seconds, I hope. Pair it with somebody that you already do every day. We wash our hands a few times a day, things that you do every day. When you wash your hands, you take out breaths. Do that 7 times, it will become habit. Start with the self first. What's coming up for me? How do I stay regulated? What's getting in the way? Then we can go outward. How are others experiencing this situation? What's coming up for them? What is it that we need to, what is the problem that we need to come together to solve? And then we can think of solutions. We often go straight to solutions and we're triggered ourselves and we don't notice we are. I promise you, you're going to come up with a very different action steps if you go through these steps than if you go straight to the solution, especially when you feel reactive, especially in times of stress and uncertainty and anxiety. Slow down. That's when we need to slow down the most. Some components of reflective practice, if you are able to integrate reflective supervision into your organizations, the components of reflective supervision are collaboration. It's collaborative, it's not top down. We all have expertise and things to bring to the table. It is regular and predictable. That's the antidote of stress and trauma. It's unpredictable. So we make reflective practice predictable. And it is reflective. That's the antidote of reactive. You can, if you don't have access to reflective supervision, you can do peer consultation. But having spaces where we can reflect on our work is essential. Meetings where we process loss, ruptures. If there's like a local thing that has happened where we can come together and where we can come together to celebrate too. I promise I'm almost done. I realize, Griselda, I have 1 minute and I'm going to end on this light. I asked Griselda to stop me, but now I'm stopping myself. I want to end with hope. This came from Alicia Lieberman. I've learned so much from her. She said to me, wise hope is the hope that comes from feeling pain deeply. Going too quickly to hope to avoid pain is brittle. And I just want to make a distinction that when I say hope, I mean the practice of choosing hope despite knowing reality. And I don't mean this Pollyanna, let's just stay positive. Everything will be okay, just stay positive, this kind of toxic positivity. I don't mean that. I mean radical hope. I mean knowing that change has happened, there's a precedent for hope, and change has happened in the past. We stand on the shoulders of long lines of ancestors that have fought other fights and have overcome, and therefore you're here today. It's hope in that I choose to find hope in what in the piece of the puzzle that I can contribute to, however small that might be, that I can have some agency in it, and that I can choose to think that things can be better and change can happen. Because what is the alternative of hope? And if we get to a place of despair, we lost this battle. They want us to feel that, and we are not going to do that, as I started out today. And lastly, gratitude. Again, our ancestors would chuckle, thinking, oh, really, you discovered something new, interesting. But they have discovered, and they have really great research at the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley on gratitude. The practice of gratitude, again, is a practice. It's a choice. Has been connected to improve sleep, reduce fatigue, again, reduce cellular inflammation, which is how we measure aging and health. Better physical health, happiness, and all these things. How do you have a practice of gratitude? A choice to find something you are grateful for, despite the stressors and the insults. We are interconnected in this. In every fabric of our being, we always have been. We are not separate. We are interconnected from each other. We are interconnected with nature. And I love this metaphor of fungi. They intertwine these tiny threads. It's called mycelium with other plants. They have this very complex network that detects and detects the like illness or fire or any stress signals in other trees. And through this network, they share water, carbon, nitrogen, and other nutrients to recover. This is how trees recover from natural disasters. So our beautiful redwoods here in the Bay Area are interconnected. That is how they can be so tall. And their roots aren't really even as deep as you would think they should be for as tall as they are. But the reason they are so strong is because they're interconnected with each other. And the mycelium helps them communicate. And so I leave you with this metaphor. How many people are here today? Help me, Griselda.
About 84.
84. You are, I have proof for you that you're not alone. There's 83 other people here that thought, I want to help immigrant and refugee families and children experiencing fear right now. I want to come to this talk. I am doing this work. They're doing this work with us. You are not alone. And there's many, many others. We are all interconnected. And when we're down, we need to let this network hold you, catch you. And when you have the energy, you got to catch others. We have to catch each other. And with that, I will end. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Reyes, thank you so much. That was incredibly informative and inspiring. And I would like to pivot now to Roberto Macias, who is a licensed family or marriage and family therapist. That was my error earlier. So I would like to welcome Roberto to do a little introduction of himself and his work. And we will would like to engage. I would like to just say this now for our audience. Please be prepared to bring in some questions for Roberto. Again, our licensed marriage and family therapist. Thank you, Roberto.
Welcome, everybody. That was a great presentation, Dr. Reyes. It was amazing. Thank you for all that wisdom. Well, I work at Children's Hospital of Oakland. I've been at Children's for a little bit over 20 years, and my program focuses on working with preschool age children and work with them and the families in the classroom. I was also a mental health specialist with the Army, so I have experience with that group, veterans, and also did a lot of work at group homes. So I also have some experience with that group of the population. And I think I'm hoping that I offer a little something to understand what children go through. I think I'll be more focused on how it presents, how anxiety presents in the classroom, how children's difficulties in the world manifest in the classroom, and I hope that that is useful. So a lot of my cases are referred to us because of the children's acting out behaviors. So in the classroom, because the needs of teachers and to manage class behavior, I think acting out is mostly referred to us, and the acting out often has as a basis to the stress, situational stress. Families are under-resourced. Um, Many are immigrants. Actually, the great majority of the families that I work with are immigrants. And some of them have been traumatized uh, for issues not related to immigration per se, but many have also been traumatized by the process of immigration, especially for those who have come into the country undocumented. Um, it is it is a very it is a very challenging situation, especially for those that had to be separated. Some families are, I guess, are lucky enough that when they come into the country can stay together. Not all have that luxury, and that even those small separations, even if it's for hours, can have lasting impact on the sense of trust that the child has on the parent. Um, Dr. Reyes was talking about the need of children to feel that the parent can protect them. Uh, that is very true when they separate and the parent isn't there and they are led by strangers to come across when they don't have the documentation. That can be very traumatic and lasting. I personally know many families who have gone through that experience, and these behaviors that they exhibit catch, I guess, the parents by surprise. Like my son wasn't like this. Mi hijo no era así. Uh, they are now angry. They are not eating as well. They're getting into things that they weren't before. Um, and often this type of stress can also mimic other things. As many of us know, presentations like ADHD, trauma can mimic that. And then if there's other mental health, I guess presentations also can be make it just more complex. I think one of the things that I'm sure many of us know, it's stress can either create a problem with mental health or exacerbate somewhat something that it already exists there. And so that stress of migrating, of acculturation, it's a long process that many families are not prepared for. Also, borrowing from what Dr. Reyes was saying, the building of community is very important for these families. Some of them don't have anybody when they come in, and the school might be the first place where they start to build a little bit of community, uh, with other parents, with teachers. Um, Luckily, I do my work in a place where the administrators of the schools are very good at this, reading the parents' needs, offering resources, um, and supporting the parents, trying, and connecting them with others too. Um, I was curious about how many, or if we know if there's teachers here, and how many teachers there are participating, but just curious, just out of curiosity. Um, uh,
You can
Speaking a
raise
little,
your hand if you'd like, or you can just put in the chat if you are currently teaching in a classroom.
um, so many of um, the sorry, so the acting out behaviors I was speaking of. So it's children that are running around, not being able to pay attention, mimicking, like I said, some of the ADHD behaviors. Some will actually meet the criteria for ADHD, even though the etiology is not necessarily a biological one, but more of an experiential one because of the process of being here and acculturating and what that means to the family. Um, there is also those that have had that happen, and also in the background, they had to flee because home things at home weren't very stable. There was maybe domestic violence, maybe the place where these families lived was, you know, um, just too unstable, places where there's too much crime, and moms just want to take their children to a safer place. We know that most of the, I would say probably, well, in my experience, I think pretty much every uh, immigrant family that I know has got a really good reason to leave. I remember little kids telling me about rifles and bazookas and things that I just couldn't make sense of why this 4-year-old is telling me about these weapons. But that was the reality of this particular child that I'm thinking of, and the reason why they had to leave. Children talking about how people in their community disappear, um, how they know somebody who make that people disappear, and they're very well identified, and people that feared, and so they are pushed into coming into the country, um, one way or another for their safety, in order to keep the family together, in order to keep the family safe. Um, uh, I also see um, children who, developmentally, depending on the age, um, younger children may also sometimes look delayed, like speech may not happen on time, for them because of traumatic events, the immigration process. Um, they are not meeting some of the developmental milestones on time because of the chronic stress around maybe, complex circumstances. Just maybe experiencing the fear that the family as a whole is experiencing may do some of that. Um, Also, maybe the parents are not able to attune to the child as needed, and thus not able to interact as much with them, and not providing them with the opportunities that they need to develop those early skills, developmental milestones that all children experience. Um, and I'm wondering if there's any questions for me in particular.
I can start us off,
Mhm.
Roberto, considering your incredible experience and expertise in working with preschoolers and young children in classroom settings. How would you say uh, schools are prepared to respond to these symptoms? I understand your program is working very closely with schools, and I'm just wondering what are the things that what does it look like in a classroom for a teacher um, that would call on your type of services? What's happening in the classroom or with particular students? What kind of behaviors or symptoms are showing up for a
Yeah,
preschool or TK or kindergarten classroom?
yeah, yeah. So in general, the children that are most referred to as, are the ones that act out, right? So any child that doesn't follow the directions of the teacher, any child that doesn't is not able to sit during their more structured times, like circle time, any child that is maybe hitting too much, that is unable to, regulate, doesn't have yet the capacity. I think sometimes the expectations of the schools are too high for the children, but that's just the world that we live in. Or we also have teachers that are under-resourced, overworked, uh, and there's a lot of expectations for them with little support. Um, Head Starts, I, I in the Head Starts that I work, are they're not set to help, to work with the number of children who have special needs. Um, in my experience, right now, I think every classroom that I am, I see an increase on of children who have been diagnosed with autism in particular. Uh, 20 years ago when I started, it was, I would say, maybe either I didn't have the clinical lens to see them, or they weren't there. But I don't remember to have seen that many. Now every classroom, every year, I in my caseload, I have at least half of them are autistic. And autism, yeah, it's another thing that often it gets referred to us. Um, so problems with speech, problems with social skills in general, um, and teachers often, Um, not often, well, sometimes often, depends on the school, um, seem to be more concerned about managing the classroom because that's what comes from the institution, right? They want to make sure that everybody's safe, that everybody does the routine so that they can learn these preschool age activities, like just sitting down for a little bit, being able to participate in group activities. And when children don't do that, that's when they call us in. Um,
I
yeah.
wanted to ask a little bit about that as we were hearing a little bit about some of these regulation kind of activities that seem kind of counter what the expectation of school is, right? To sit at the table to complete a task when maybe with the immigration story and context of what a child is living in and bringing to school with, I'm wondering what kind of activities or supports you or type of services can offer to teachers, considering these very real difficult challenges around resources um, and also I think even just battling within the education system itself and the cultural norms that have been the case that I think teachers are in the front line of having to figure out how to make adjustments and adaptations. What kinds
Mhm,
of suggestions or tips or support
mhm.
often do you find yourself giving to teachers?
Also borrowing from some of the things that Dr. Reyes said, um, helping the adult. So in my eyes, they're very similar environments in that the child in the family, you help the parent so that the parent can help the child. In the classroom, it's the same thing, right? So you help the teacher so that the teacher can help the child. That's one of the ways in which I look at my work. Sort of, I guess, in a structural sort of way, we need a good foundation, the foundation being the adult in the classroom. So part of my work is to help after the child is referred to me and I understand the history of the child, is for me to help then the teacher understand the child, giving a little background, helping them understand that this isn't just malicious, intentional behavior, but that there is something behind it. This is some sort of adaptive mechanism for something that happened to this particular child. And I think that it helps to build empathy in the teachers. And I stay in constant communication with them. Part of my work really also is to build good relationships with them because it's easier for them to listen to me if I have a good relationship with them, right? If they trust my work, they trust what I say. So that's a big part of what I do, especially when I have initially entered a particular classroom.
Vina, I see that you have, it sounds like maybe there might be a question in the chat. I wanted to just
Oh,
invite you to unmute and ask.
Hi, Dr. Roberto. I wanted to check what your experience is with referrals from classrooms where teachers are also referring regarding behavioral issues. We often see that children from communities of color are referred more often for issues like what they consider behavioral issues, which may be more related to mental health, psychological issues, or ADH. I almost say that wrong, sorry, even after all these years. So I was wondering on your experience around that, especially at this particular time where communities of color uh, and children that are immigrants and undocumented may be more targeted because of perceptions.
yeah, yeah, that is a consideration that I'm always having as I am in the classroom. And sometimes it can be tricky. Um, the spaces where I work, the majority of the children, I would say 99% of the children are minorities, recent immigrants, people of color. Um, so I would say that it's a tricky question because the children do need the services and you don't want to overrepresent them in that particular space, right? But at the same time, I have also seen it where I feel like I'm fighting with the school districts because they don't want to provide the services that the child needs and, and has to have. So I often I like to participate in IEPs and be with parents, and I often feel like I'm a little bit of like a lawyer because I have to cite the IDEA Act and I have to cite things from these, federal laws that the school districts don't abide by often. I've seen children where they have already had IEPs that it has already been, said that they need speech, and there's a vacation. They come from the break, and 6 months pass, and they haven't received those speech services. I have children who are autistic, who have a medical diagnosis, and you know parents have gone to the school district and say I need support, and a year has passed and they haven't received those services. So I had a lot of those cases where I'm just like uh, angry to say the least, because it's so unfair to communities of color. And yeah, so that's my particular experience with that. um, I'm I hope I answer that for you, sort of, at least. Yeah. uh, Thank you. Um, yeah, so I want to say, the other piece is also, I was saying that acting out behaviors are most often referred, but there's also the other side, right? In the terms of how the body responds to stress and trauma. There's a lot of children who are very quiet and compliant, and they don't make noise in the classroom. And I'm often more concerned about those because it's, for the children, for the teachers, it's so easy to just, you know, s- not think that there's anything happening because they just do anything that they tell them. They're easy, but they're not talking. They're not building relationships. They don't seem happy. I remember having a client who would go to the fence, stand on the fence, and then just be looking out like into the universe and not interacting with anybody. Uh, and they would have this particular school that I'm thinking of had a person who, would came and observed the child and said, just give her a little more time. And I'm there and I'm thinking like, what more time do you want to give to this child? This is not something that, happened one time. I mean, this is like weeks of you witnessing this, of teachers reporting this, and you think that this is something that is just passing. Clearly there's a bigger problem here. Um, so I think, children like these can be easily overlooked. And so that's another thing that I try to do when I'm in the classroom. Even if I'm not working with a particular client, a particular child, if I see any child in the classroom where I am that would probably benefit from some sort of assessment referral, I bring it to the attention of the teachers and to the site directors when I'm there. I advocate for even for children that are not my clients necessarily, but that need some sort of support. Uh, Children that don't talk much. You often hear, "Well, they're just a little shy." Well, right now I'm thinking of a child who um, the family came in not too long ago from Venezuela. Had to make that very challenging trip with little resources, and the child doesn't talk much at all. She barely. I don't think I think it took me probably over 6 months to hear a word from her, and even the words are not. She's still not where she needs to be. And I don't know her story because she's not my client. But as soon as I, started to notice that, I definitely made a point to make sure that some attention was given to her in the classroom, advocating for her so that there could be some sort of referral for her. And now, thankfully, she is receiving services. And indeed, she did need mental health support in the classroom. So that's the other sort of side of the spectrum. Mostly again the children with acting out behaviors, which are easily noticed by the teachers because of the demands that they have for class management, and then less often you see the children that have sort of internalized behaviors referred for services. And I think that when I'm in the classroom, I have to really pay attention to that. Vina, yes, I thank you for that comment. I am really worried about that now that we don't have a Department of Education. What is going to happen? I mean, as it is, we had a Department of Education, and they didn't, I- in my experience, they weren't great at doing what they were supposed to be doing in the school districts in terms of providing support for the children with needs. So now it's yeah, I don't know where things stand. It's very uncertain times. Teachers at schools are scared because they think they're going to lose their uh, jobs. And I think also sometimes that trickles down into the classroom, how they behave, how they are with each other, how they are with the children. That uncertainty, that anxiety that they are experiencing trickles down to the kids. So that's definitely something that I'm seeing a lot of, almost in every conversation lately that I've had with teachers at some point or another. That is a subject that comes up. Um, are we going to lose our jobs, and the anxiety? Um, and again, given that the teacher is, in some sense, sort of that parental figure, that those emotions get then reflected on the children, and then the children may experience some of that anxiety also. Um, that fear of the teacher that the teacher has about losing its job may trickle down into the children. They may become a little more short with the kids. They may be a little less tolerant. They may not be paying attention in the way that they used to because they're distracted by their inner thoughts. They might be more edgy with each other. Actually, I'm thinking about that right now. In one of the schools where I am, there's a lot of teacher to teacher friction, difficulties getting along with each other. Um, this school has 4 classrooms, and only one of them actually seems to have some sort of regular uh, uh, work environment where they are able to get along with each other, support each other. The other 3 are in constant uh, interpersonal difficulties. The site director having to mediate a lot of that. And then the children in the classroom where this is particularly problematic is one of the classrooms with most behavioral issues. And I strongly believe that it's because the teachers themselves cannot manage their own anxieties, the more, their interpersonal issues. They're unable to work together, and that creates an atmosphere where children become more stressed, more anxious, and have more behavioral difficulties. Uh, I being able to work with the site director to point this out, and I think they agree. And like I said, and like we all know, they're underfunded, overworked, and so there isn't much that they can do about it, but try to mitigate a little bit of that, those differences that exist between the teachers. Um, and in the meantime, the children are having to live through that and exhibiting all these behaviors that are problematic for class management.
Thank you, Vina, for sharing that comment, and Roberto as well. And just want to check the chat to see if there were other comments or questions that folks would like to also share. I know there was a comment here about as a CHW, I'm working with immigrant families, most from Central South America. They are facing big challenges. The resources they need are very limited, and the health system is very complicated, and most for immigrant families with children that need extra services. Also, if there's any folks that has any questions, you're welcome to come off mute and share any questions, thoughts, perhaps any reflections you'd like to share.
I want to share a little bit about how my program works in the meantime. Um, so the school refers the child to us. We already have some MOUs with different school districts. Hayward, Alameda, Oakland are some, but we've also worked in San Leandro, so all of Alameda County basically. They make the referral, send it to our supervisor. Our supervisor then, you know, sees whose workloads are small enough to take a client. We take the client, we go in, we do an assessment about usually about a month, but sometimes because we have already spent time at that particular classroom, we already know the kids and we don't need to spend that much time assessing. Um, After we assess, then we start working with the kids. And we always do it in the classroom. We don't do any sort of pullouts. It's more like we're in the classroom with the child to help with co-regulation. Some kids, in my experience, are very smart, and you can actually do a little bit of a version, a developmentally appropriate version of what maybe talk therapy would look like. Um, but for most kids, I believe it's more of I feel like I'm sort of like a parent in the classroom where I'm helping co-regulate when I'm um, trying to inflate the sense of self-worth, giving them that unconditional positive regard. Um, and also at the same time, we provide services for the families, for the parents who may be experiencing, a multitude of challenges. We can provide dyadic therapy for the family too. We when we can't when we don't have the capacity to fulfill that, we seek for partner agencies or other programs within Children's Hospital of Oakland that might be able to help with that so that they can receive the services. We don't leave the children hanging. And after, because we focus on the preschool age, once they transition into kindergarten, what we mostly do is try to, if the issues have not been resolved, is we make sure that there's an IEP so that the school district will be able to address the needs of the child. Sometimes we'll keep some of those children in our caseloads and work with them after school, but that is very rare.
Thank you, Roberta, for sharing some insight around that. I also wanted to see if there's anybody else that would like to share any comments or questions. You're welcome to come off mute and share your question out. So we would like to take this opportunity to transition and see if there's any other questions that folks may have with Dr. Vilma Reyes' presentation and or questions for Roberto. So we'd like to open up this floor for folks to share out some comments, questions, perhaps any reflections from what was discussed today. Just checking the screen to see if any folks would like to come off mute and share any comments and or questions.
I don't have a question, but I did want to say thank you so much for these presentations and Dr. Reyes for sharing all the information and tools with us, but also reminding us that there is hope even though families we work with are facing such a difficult time, and with the policies and the impact from federal, state to local, and the fear that our communities are dealing with, but also knowing that this has happened before and there will be a path forward at some point. And I think having to hold that hope for ourselves who do the work, and then also in our communities and with the families we work with, and continuing to find those tools that will support them, and with the children especially.
Thank you, Ina. There was a comment earlier about trust and systems, and I thought there was another comment that now I don't see that also alluded to building trust and oh, there it is, building trust and supporting families. And I think, we are part of systems. We represent systems. And all the fear that families feel towards systems sometimes can extend to us. And I think the best thing we can do to build trust is to be honest. I'm being like extra transparent in all my informed consents about I want to give hope, and I also don't want to overpromise. Be honest with what we know, equipping people with what they can do. I'm so glad Roberto mentioned all the things that we can do towards systems. He said he's like a lawyer, and I do think advocacy is part of our roles in making sure people have the rights that they deserve. So there is an advocacy piece. There is a piece of building trust through honesty, not, I can say how systems are designed to be, and I also know systems fail and recognize systems have betrayed families, and they understandably might have fear about starting therapy with me. So I just start an honest conversation from the beginning. And then lastly is taking care of yourself, because that's a tough place to be in. You got into this work because you want to make a difference, and it feels terrible to not be able to change things that are unjust. So that's why I made such a highlight today on caring for each other, because I know that takes a toll. But I think those are the three things I would suggest, and maybe I'm sure Roberto has other things to add to build trust. It's like, I know you might not want to think of yourself as part of a system, but we are. So starting with being honest that might bring up things for families. They are taking a risk by engaging in therapy. Let's be real. I mean, I always told them that we're mandated reporters, but I talk about it a little more in terms of many people are afraid that engaging in services is going to impact their immigration case. We've had a significant dip in referrals across agencies, and I consult in San Mateo in the South Bay. We've seen it at our clinic in San Francisco. Families are afraid. Kids are afraid, and fear is appropriate. It's, it is necessary. They have to keep themselves safe, and it breaks my heart to say that, but I just start off with that this is what I can promise. We're not connected to immigration. Your information would be kept private in all the ways I can keep it private, and whatever role you're in, making sure we really stand firm to protect families within systems, schools, and all the other systems that are here today. And then also be honest about your limitations, because I do have to abide by these laws, and I don't know, CPS should not be connected to immigration, but maybe they are, or they could be in the future. Like, I think part of trust is being honest, even if it hurts to say it, because I think sometimes we feel so terrible about it that we say, oh, everything's going to be okay, but maybe it won't. So I don't know, Roberto, if you want to say more about trust.
I think you're right on. I mean, being honesty, this is the only way that you can build trust is by being honest. So I think you touch on all the important points. I don't think you're leaving much for me.
Well, I want to say the fact that you've been at your clinic for so long, and so have I. I think part of trust too is just like sticking it out and being constant people. Like, I'm sure that people at the school, you've built in trust in systems as you do system work, and that goes a long way. So sometimes it's just time and persistence. And like, I wish I could change more of the things troubling you, and I can't, but I am in your corner, and you can trust that I'm going to do everything I can. Sometimes it's just saying, this isn't right. I wish you didn't have to worry about this. This is not fair. And just naming that and sitting with the discomfort that I can't fix it, you know? And
Yeah.
same with children. Yeah.
I think maybe one thing that I would add is be your genuine self. Um, you know, I think I assume that all of us are here because we care, and I think that that shows in how you approach a parent. Um, so I encourage you to be yourself, the caring human being that you are, and being honest, like we've mentioned. There's also that issue of distrust from some of the families, and like Dr. Reyes says, that's totally normal. Um, there's also people who have previously been impacted by the systems in not in a very positive way. Many people, through the years when I'm working with the families, some of them think that I'm part of CPS because I work with a hospital, and so just trying to or making them making it clear how we are separate entities, and also like Dr. Reyes was saying, also sort of the limits of what my professional work, speaking about those limits, and not promising anything that I can't really do for them. Uh, do the best that I can in terms of referring to agencies, um, other 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 places where they might have their needs met, that sort of thing.
I'd like to also mention some comments shared in the chat. Someone's found that warm handoffs are critical. People are even more wary, understandably, about random people calling to ask questions. And being honest with children and with adults and with one another, with those with whom we trust, as where trust has been established. And building relationships and helping navigating the systems with advocacy and with authenticity. With any other comments, questions, reflections that you'd like to share, you're welcome to come off mute and share with the floor.
Just want to appreciate and lift up what Roberto said about the internalizing kids. The most common referrals we get are externalizing preschoolers. So birth to 3, before they enter systems in which they're disrupting teachers and systems, often fall through the cracks. Internalizing kids fall through the cracks. So as you're thinking of yourself as an advocate, the people who need you the most to be the eyes and ears and lift up, because they're not getting referred to us, are the babies, the infants, the toddlers, and the internalizing kids. Because the way they show the stress is not always so obvious to providers, because people think if you're a baby, you won't remember, and you must be okay. You look okay to me. They don't know what to look for. And internalizing kids, when you have a big ratio, you're grateful for the kid that's not disrupting the system. But if a kid is not playing, if a kid is not connected, if it's not making meaningful connections with teachers or other kids, as Roberto said, I agree with you, Roberto. I am more concerned about those kids than the externalizers, because the externalizers have found a way to disrupt the system enough to send an alarm and say, I need help. Something is not right. I don't feel right. I need help. And they have a fast track to us. They disrupt the system. They get to people like Roberto and me. But the kids that are sad and are not playing, sometimes the teachers will be like, oh, I'm so grateful for that one. That one's okay. Even parents will maybe come for one kid, and the one that It's internalized. They're like, oh, but she's okay or he's okay. They're so helpful. You know, if a kid is following every rule, that's a red flag. You're supposed to make mistakes. You're supposed to feel safe enough to make mistakes. And um, so just we are the eyes and ears for those kids. So I just want to lift up what you said, Roberto. I agree.
So we would like to wrap things up. If there's no any other questions, comments, or reflections to be shared, I just want to take a moment to thank you, Roberto and Dr. Reyes, for creating this space for healing and opportunity to connect with community and providing mental resources and recommendations to support immigrant families and refugees. I'd also like to thank Griselda Chavez, as well as Aura Aparicio over there at Center of Excellence for this collaboration. Also want to thank you all for joining us today, and hope that you do also take the time to take a moment to reflect and take care of yourselves. And I wish you all the best in service to community. And we will be sending out an email to share today's presentation, as well as the resources. And again, thank you all for joining us today, and keep an eye out for evaluation. We appreciate your feedback. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.